You're listening to the Sass Says podcast. I'm your host, Christy Rocha, also known as Sass. I identify as a woman, a wife, and a mother. That should tell you a lot already. And over the last few years, I've learned the value of talk therapy. I have seen how my inner work not only enhances my own well-being, but also my marriage, my parenting, my relationships. And in fact, you wouldn't be hearing this right now if it weren't for the work I've done. My mission is to debunk the misconceptions and stigmas around what therapy is and who it's for. Let's normalize working on our mental health and seeking help when needed. We've all heard of self-care, self-help, and self-love, but do you often wonder how to actually make it all happen? I do. You'll hear strategy-based conversations with professionals, as well as inspiring and validating stories from women who are just like you and me. Think of this podcast as the weekly therapy sessions you didn't know you needed, with a dash of sass, a lot of vulnerability, and me, relentlessly asking, but how? Hello. All right. So today I have Carlie Nolan. She is the host of the Carl Her Mommy podcast and a mom of two. If you're listening to this in real time, Carlie also interviewed me on her show, and that episode aired this past Monday. So if you haven't checked it out yet, get on over there and do so. Not only is Carlie's show so relatable and informative, but our conversations with each other on each other's platform really just come together so nicely, especially when you listen to both. So it was so fun to flip the script and learn more about each other in this process. Carlie has become a fast friend and a safe space for me. You will hear in today's interview that we get pretty personal pretty quickly. Carlie is game for my questions and answers them so graciously and warmly. And I say this in the most mom friend way possible. I kind of fall in love with her each time I hear this conversation again. So in this episode, we talk about Carlie's transition from lawyer to stay-at-home mom, her postpartum mental health journey, the New Year's resolution that changed everything, and we take a deep dive into making mom friends. We discuss what it means to quote-unquote do the work on yourself, and we have a moment where Carlie really brings me back to reality during a vulnerable conversation around postpartum body image. So yeah, this conversation is jam-packed, and I know after hearing it, you will want to be besties with her too. So here's Carlie, and as always, stay tuned after for my final thoughts. Hey Carlie, thank you so much for being here with me tonight.
Christy, thanks for having me.
We were laughing earlier that we're both waiting for our toddlers to go potty before we could start, and I don't think there's anything more relatable than that.
No, when you sent me that email, I was cracking up because my toddler was doing the exact same thing.
Oh my goodness. Well, your platform, your podcast, Carl Her Mommy, Motherhood as We Know It, you know, how did you get there? Because I know your background is in law. Like, how did all of this come to be for you?
Okay, so it is kind of a unusual route that I took to get here, but essentially, my husband is now just about to wrap up his medical residency, but rewind 4 years ago, we were fresh out of law school, med school, and hoping he would match in New York City where I had a job at a law firm. And he matched in Buffalo, New York, which was not what we were expecting. And at the same time, I was pregnant with our first child. And essentially, when it came time to pivot and take a job here in Buffalo, the pay cut was really like drastic. Obviously, the cost of living and things like that are very different between New York City and Buffalo. But the type of law I was doing in investment management, it just wasn't really my dream job wasn't available here. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, it was going to be the case that we would be paying for a full-time nanny, probably for daycare too, for pickup drop off, because as a lawyer, no matter how much money you're making, you're not really working a 9 to 5. So between William's long hours and my long hours, I realized it didn't make sense. And I felt very much called to pivot and become a stay-at-home mom. And I did just that, but I found myself in motherhood in a brand new city. We didn't have any friends, any family. I wasn't working, so I didn't have that like group of colleagues. And yeah, I started off my motherhood journey like really isolated.
Mm.
And I knew I needed community. And essentially over the past 3 years, I was able to create an amazing community here in Buffalo, make so many mom friends, and also make mom friends virtually because, of course, we're on add the layer of living in a global pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I just realized like I'm so passionate about this. I love it. Like you always see the maybe you don't, but I always see the TikToks of moms and parents saying like that they show up to the park and they are running away from other parents. They don't want to talk to them. I'm the opposite. I like show up at the park because I'm dying to like go say hi to you, see how you're doing, like connect, meet other women who are around doing the same things. And because of that, because I realized I was so passionate about connecting with other women and sharing candidly about my motherhood journey, I thought, what the heck? I'm just going to make a podcast. And it was kind of on a whim. And
Mm-hmm.
that was in maybe September. And then I launched in October. And now we've been doing it for almost 6 months. So it's just been really fun and so awesome. And just like something that totally fills up my cup.
Mm-hmm. So going back, well, how did you and your husband meet?
So this is kind of a funny story. My husband's younger sister, who's just like 18 months younger than him, she and I went to college together. And one weekend, William was visiting Catherine at Siena, where we went to college. It was a small Catholic school in Albany, New York. And we met and just hit it off, and the rest is kind of history.
Okay. Okay. I was just curious, and so I don't know. That was just a random question, but um, when you guys moved, he matched in Buffalo. Did you go through a period of any resentment or any uncertainty? Like, I get it. He matched, you gotta go, but it meant you giving up your career. Like, how did that transition go for you?
You know what? Yeah, I had to grieve the life that I thought I was going to have. I for sure did. I was confused, and I don't think I would ever use the word resentment, at least not towards William, because it was like, it really wasn't him.
Mm-hmm.
It matches totally out of your hands. And before we got married, we kind of knew that William's career would be the one that was prioritized of the two of ours, mostly
Okay.
because I always eventually saw myself becoming a stay-at-home mom. I mean,
Okay. Okay.
the
That
the
makes
game
sense.
plan
Yeah.
in a perfect world was I would work for the 4 years of residency, make a lot of money, pay off his debt, maybe save a little bit, and then by the time we were like more on our feet and he was done with residency, I probably would become a stay-at-home mom or drastically scale back my career. I didn't really have like
Got it.
huge time career aspirations like I did because I was obsessed with my job that I had in New York, but um, that was a super unique kind of once in a lifetime type career
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. And then to pivot to something that was like drastically less exciting and mentally fulfilling for me and the opportunities that were available here in Buffalo at the time for me, it just made sense.
Mm-hmm.
So although and that I mean that was a hard time, like I said, like I saw my life going one way, but God very clearly was calling me towards something totally different, and I think so much greater and more fulfilling than I could have ever imagined. I think it's so clear to me, and it did take that long for me to get there, but I would say like, there was a good 2 or 3 months of just I worked so freaking hard for all of this. Like,
Yeah.
is it all a waste? That type of a feeling. But in terms of resentment, I never really resented William, especially because he felt really called towards this career, like in a way that is totally in his heart and in his soul, and a way that he needs to help other people. And my career was more of a means to an end. So
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
least in our marriage, I felt very supported and seen by him. And one thing that really helped with the transition too was he just was very verbal with me at that time about how much my sacrifice meant to him and
Mm.
how profound he thought that was. And it was inspiring to him that I cared so much about our family and nurturing our family in that way. And that made me feel like really loved, really seen, and kind of helped keep me afloat when it was hard to make that transition at first. That was a
Yeah.
long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
No, no, you're fine. I actually got a chill as you were talking about, how supportive he was and just I think I don't know, the word that got me was sacrifice. And I know I said it earlier, but to hear you say it in context of him and that recognition, I it means so much to hear it more than once and in different ways, right? Like that was a big move that you made, a big shift, and it's so actually very nice to hear that he was so supportive and like you said, more I think almost more importantly vocal about it.
Yeah, exactly. Because Will is like just a super supportive and loving person, but he's not always overly verbal all the time.
Yeah.
And in that point, he was so verbal and so expressive, and he's like not. He's a very, very steady person. I
Mm.
mean, he's like fun and funny and joking, but he's so steady all the time. He's not like very highs or lows of any type of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And like there were times where he would get choked up even like expressing
Wow.
to me
Yeah.
how like profound he thought that it was. And it's something that has stuck with me even
Yeah.
years later, that
I'm
that was
sure.
like so I think it was really important for me and
Mm-hmm.
also for him.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really helpful.
Yeah. And I've touched on the idea of, grieving the life that you once had or grieving the life even that you thought you were going to have. I don't think it's as a concept talked about enough. And it comes up a lot for me on the show as far as, you know, the idea that we love our kids more than anything, but we can still grieve perhaps the life or the freedom or, you know, who we were before. It's possible to do both. It's possible to grieve what was, but love where you are.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Embracing that duality, or like the fullness of our emotions, because we can feel a lot of different things at once.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the problems that women have faced over the years is trying to suppress or pretend that they don't feel the way that they feel.
Mm-hmm.
And to be thrown into a position like we were, that was so unexpected and was such a 180 from the life that we thought we were going to lead. If I didn't let myself feel the feelings that I felt at the beginning, like if I didn't cry a lot and,
Mm-hmm.
wallow a little bit and feel sorry for myself and let it all out and allow
Mm-hmm.
myself to feel that, I'd be carrying that with me right now in some way or another, energetically or in my body or in the form of resentment. And it wasn't a nice time. Like I was like really, it was a low place.
Yeah.
But the second the veil lifted, like the second that I accepted our reality for what it was
Mm-hmm.
and was able to make peace with it, because I had allowed myself that time to grieve, the day that I woke up and was like, okay, this is what life is, this is the hand of cards I've been dealt, now I get to play them. Since then it's like um I have such a peace in my life. And if you don't let yourself feel your feelings, you can't really get to that place, is at least been my experience.
Mm-hmm. How do you think that you learned that lesson? How do you, I mean, the lesson of having to let yourself feel all the things?
Oh gosh. You know, that's a really interesting question that I don't know if anyone, I've never actually really thought about it. So I'm like grateful that you're asking me. Um, I've always been like a pretty sensitive or like emotional person.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I'm like not super into astrology or anything, but I'm a Pisces, and I feel like that might say more to other people than even it does to me. But
Totally.
I wear my
Yes.
heart on my sleeve. I
Mm.
cannot fake it. Like if I'm having a hard day, like everyone knows. Like I just I very much communicate about it. I have to talk about it with my sisters and my mom. They like, if anything is going on, I pick up the phone and I call them, and thankfully they are really great at holding space for me and like
Mm-hmm.
all of that. But I just do feel my emotions deeply, so
Mm.
it's almost like I don't have an option.
Yeah.
But although I feel them deeply, I can't always express that in a public way. And that goes towards the duality we were talking about before, right? Where it's
Mm-hmm.
like you can't be a mom and also say that like it's hard, because then you hate your kid. I love my kids, but it can be really freaking hard when your kids are, clinging to your leg when you're just trying to finish making dinner. And
Yeah.
you can feel different ways, and I always feel them, but it hasn't been until I sort of started breaking into this like motherhood world and space that I really wanted to bring that duality to the light and show people that I feel that way and not just be giving them my Instagram picture perfect, what you see on my feed all the time
Mm-hmm.
face, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it totally does. I don't know about you, but I had this idea of what I thought motherhood was. Like, it was very romanticized and glamorized, and then you become one, and not only did I become you and me, not only did I become one, but the second time around it was during this pandemic, and I motherhood for me looks nothing like what I thought it would. And
Yeah.
being, that duality that you're talking about is not something that I ever thought about or ever expected. And I appreciate what you're doing with your platform because I really want to try to figure out how we can grab moms as early as possible, even if it's pre birth, even if it's pre pregnancy, to just start to get like real about what the change is like and what it looks like and feels like and how all of it is okay and all of it is in its own way beautiful, but it can also be scary and lonely and all of the things. Like, I don't know even where I'm going with this. I'm having a hard time with my thoughts tonight, but
No, I think
it's,
everything you're saying resonates so deeply with me.
yeah.
I mean, it just makes sense that, like you're saying, it's like you go into a blind. Like you think you have an idea of what motherhood's going to be like. Even if you have close friends who are moms, most likely they're putting their best foot forward when you're with them.
Right.
That's more likely than not, that's what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're seeing on social media is also the highlight reel. And the faces for a long time in the motherhood space of the mom influencers, things like that. Like, we don't know what their behind the scenes is like. They have nannies, they have chefs, they have
Mm-hmm.
housekeepers, they have night nurses that take care of their baby at night. So they're like sleeping right away, or maybe they're not, whatever. But whatever it is, like, they might have more help or more things. And as consumers of that content, as new moms or people who aren't moms yet, we think that motherhood looks so joyous and glamorous and really sweet. And when you become a mom, you realize there's so much about it that, although like joyous and beautiful and um, better than anything you could ever imagine, it's also really, really hard, a lot harder than anything that is typically visible. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the hard stuff is so often invisible, and there are a million reasons why society and all the different factors that go into that. But
Right.
what you're saying is so true. Like, um it would be amazing if we could catch all moms and be like, hey, like, it's going to be joyful, it's going to be beautiful, there's so much positive, and we want to always focus on that and come back to that. But you aren't alone in the hard moments too, and don't be blindsided if X, Y, and Z happens to you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's like go behind the closed doors a little bit with each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I saw one of your TikToks where you were talking about experiencing postpartum depression. Can you elaborate on that experience? Was that your first or your second or both, and how did it manifest for you?
Like I mentioned earlier, we were in a new city when our first son Liam was born, and I didn't have any friends, family, support system yet. On top of that, my husband was working like 80 plus hours a week. A few weeks after he was born, William switched and he was on the night shift
Mm.
for the following 4 weeks. And
Wow.
so that early postpartum period was extremely, extremely isolated for me. And I think on top of that, our son had very severe acid reflux to a
Mm.
point of he was just so uncomfortable every time he ate. And really, I had to be constantly baby wearing him, bouncing him on a yoga ball, walking with him.
Mm.
I couldn't get him to sleep unless I was not only holding him but also physically moving him.
Oh my God.
And that was just so, so physically demanding, like
Yeah.
in a way that um, was, I don't know. I look back on that time and I think it really was just, it was just extremely challenging and physically so demanding. Like I wore an Apple Watch at that time and I was walking between like 5 to 10 miles a day.
Oh my
And sometimes
gosh.
that would be like just indoors, like in our
Oh
tiny,
my
whatever, a
gosh,
thousand
Carlie.
square foot apartment. Yeah,
And
it was like,
you're
it was,
like, you just gave birth and you're walking that. Oh my goodness.
yeah, it was the only way I could get him to stop
Oh
crying.
my
It was,
gosh.
so it was
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah, it was really intense. And so for me, the depression that I was experiencing, and so I'll also, forgive me if I'm wrong, I'm like not actually versed on this, if postpartum depression has like a different chemical or hormonal implication than like a general depression. I'm not sure if that is the case. Like if it is the crash of hormones that actually is what um, changes the diagnosis between like postpartum depression or situational, like just general depression. I'm not
I don't
sure. Do
know.
you know about that? Yeah.
I don't
But
know. I don't know well
um,
enough to say
yeah,
anything about it.
yeah, yeah.
I
I'm
can
not sure either.
speculate, but I'm not sure that helps anyone.
Yeah, right. Okay, so same. But essentially my OB, I had my 6 week appointment. I came in, I was crying. She
Yeah.
was like, okay, things aren't good. And um essentially though, what she told me, she was like, listen, yeah, I don't think you have like your typical postpartum depression. I think that like you are in a situation that literally like no one can cope with what you're going through. Like
Yeah.
she said to me, she was basically like, if I were to give you like a treatment plan, like you should go home, like go home and stay with your parents where you have more support, where your sisters are in town, where your friends are in town, where your mom can help you, because William is just so physically not present. And I didn't end up doing that because I was crippled. Like, you know how
Right.
you are when you're in a disempowered state. I
Right.
didn't even feel capable of like packing us up and even going for, a week. But as time went on, I, I don't know, I guess maybe after, I want to say probably like the first 12 weeks of just spending every waking moment concerned and obsessing over how I could help Liam and his acid reflux and his lack of sleep. Like that was the only thing I thought about, was like, how can I get him to stop throwing up everything he eats?
Mm.
How can I get him to sleep and let me set him down and sleep? And that was it. Like it was like that was my entire world. And finally, when I realized like he never slept more than 2 hours straight until he was like 5 months old.
Mm.
And I think it was around the 3 month mark though, where I decided, like, I just woke up one day and I said, I can't do this anymore. Like, I cannot live like this. Instead of fretting about the fact that he's not sleeping, I'm going to accept it. This is kind of funny because this is like a pattern now that I'm talking about. It was sort of
Mhm.
the same thing with
Mhm.
what happened before, where it's like, I wallowed for a little while. I tried everything I possibly could to fix the situation. I realized it was unfixable, and then I decided to just embrace where I was at. And it was around that time that I signed up for Baby and Me yoga. I made like a New Year's resolution. He was born in November, and so this was in January that I like sort of started rounding a corner. I decided I would say hi to every single person I walked past on the streets while I was walking with Liam. And we live in a city, like in an area where I was walking past a lot of people. So instead of like putting my head down and looking the other way, I stopped, I smiled, I said hi. I started interacting with people. I made a couple of friends at the Baby and Me yoga class. And it was like, even just having one friend, you know how much of a difference that makes. Like it got the
Mhm.
ball rolling. And the next thing I knew it, by the time it was spring, I was just like out there at the park making friends with whoever. And yeah, it was like, it was, depression was there. And thankfully, like I was just able to like work my way out of it. And I know that's not the case for a lot of people. So I'm
Mhm.
lucky that it kind of worked out the way it did.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Okay. So was making that resolution and more importantly doing it, the saying hi, was that a comfortable place for you or was that hard?
Well, it was actually like not that hard for me because I
Okay.
am a really social person.
Okay. Okay.
But I think it was the reminder that that I am a social
Ah,
person.
yes.
Like when you're in that dark place and you're I was so, it was like, I mean, so self-centered in a certain regard. Like
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really was Liam centered was what my thoughts were all revolving around.
Right.
And like what was going on in my own life, but remembering like, no, I actually like, really like being social. Like I typically have like a community of friends around me that I like spending time with. And I like saying hi to strangers and smiling at them and acknowledging their dignity when I'm walking past them. And so
Mm.
it's not really hard for me to do that. But obviously like it just didn't cross my mind the first couple of months when I was so in my own head.
Yeah. Well, and completely sleep deprived, which
Yeah, and
doesn't make it
completely.
easy to do anything at all. And I ask that because, I think the idea of making mom friends gets talked about a lot, but there are a lot of women out there who don't have a lot or don't have any. And I can imagine how someone who might struggle with that, who might struggle with just saying hello to random people on the street, would feel so relieved to be the person that walked by you and have you do it for them. Because I just, I don't know. I feel it sometimes even at like pick up and drop off at preschool in the morning. It's like, I want to get in, I want to get out, I want to get on my way. And I sometimes do have to remind myself to even just smile at people. It's like
Yeah.
we just get, never mind even being in a depressed state or an anxious state, which I experience plenty of, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm just like completely in awe of this story because it seems so far away from where I am right now. Like, I don't feel like I could do that.
Oh, you know what, Christy? I'm curious. Do you mind my asking, like, what part of the country you are from? And I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to this
I'm in New
already.
Jersey.
Okay, yeah, so you're in the Northeast too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what area of New Jersey you're in, but the New York vibes are different. And
Yes. Where are you from originally?
Buffalo, I'm originally from Syracuse, but we have family in New Jersey and we've spent some time down there. And we were actually thinking we were planning on living in like northern New Jersey
Mm-hmm.
because the law firm I was at had an office in New Jersey and New York. And
Mm.
we figured if we had a family, it would be nice. We were thinking of like Montclair. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Oh,
area.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, my brother-in-law is like right around there too.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, so I mean that could probably make it harder too because it depends. Like people are kind of in a rush. Like I
Yes.
think people are really busy there. Buffalo is much more Midwest vibes. It's called the
Ah.
city of good neighbors,
Oh my
and it's
goodness. Yeah. Okay.
it's it lives up to its name in my estimation.
Okay.
But you know what I've realized about saying hi to people and especially moms at the park, like I live half a mile from the biggest park right in the city of Buffalo. It's an incredible park. It was designed by the same people who designed Central Park.
Mm.
And um, it has a playground that's perfect size for toddlers and it attracts if you
Mm-hmm.
go at the right time of day. It's just mostly other stay-at-home moms or
Mm-hmm.
moms with young children because it's not quite a nice enough playground for the bigger kids to go to.
Got it.
Um, and so it's so interesting though what you're saying, being on the other end of it. And when I see a mom, like I have a whole podcast episode on this called like how to make mom friends. So if your listeners are kind of like relating to the sentiment that you have, it might be one that's worth listening to. But
Mm-hmm.
what I think is makes me want to approach like that is people just want to be seen, and I want to see people. Like when I met my husband the first night I met him, I felt seen by him and like seen deeply, and like
Mm-hmm.
he cared and wanted to hear what I had to say, and it transformed my entire heart. And like I want to make other people feel that way. Like I want
Mm-hmm.
people to know that they're seen, even if it's as simple as like saying hi, how are you at the park. Like for me, I don't have like a social anxiety or a fear about it because the worst case scenario is like they say something very brief and that shows me they don't want to talk to me, or they like have already given off that energy enough that I know not to approach them.
Mm-hmm.
That's rare. But when I do go up to people and I literally just say like, I typically say like, oh, your kid is so cute. Like, how old are they? And then from there, I'll be like, I'll ask them like, hey, like, how's your day going? Or like, how are you? What's your name? Basic stuff. And I will typically try to ask them like, how are you? And Christy, you'd be shocked, like absolutely floored when you put out the energy that like you care to hear what other people are about to say. And like, I genuinely want to know, like, how are you? Because motherhood is hard. Like, I want to know, like, how are you? Absolute strangers have told me, like, I'm struggling with postpartum depression. I just switched my pills and now my milk supply is tanking. My in laws are in town and I'm at the park right now because I'm escaping them. I just moved to Buffalo and you're the first person who I've talked to that's another mom. Like,
Yeah.
people want to connect and they
Yeah.
want to be seen and heard. And I feel like I can hold space for that right now at the place I am in my life. Like, I really can hold space for it. And so I do. And it's made it such a fruitful thing for me to approach other moms and make friends and say hi. And I'm like so glad. Like, I wish that I was at your park, Christy. So like, if I could walk up to you and
Me
say
too.
hi, because yeah, I just.
Are you sure you don't want to move to Jersey?
Well, you never know. You never know. It's like not totally ruled out at this point.
Okay. Well, you let me know. But I think what
I
you
know.
said is so true too. When you said that you are at a place where you can hold that space for someone answering how are you with I'm really struggling today. And I think that my I guess fear really is what it is that if someone asks me how I am, what I really want to say is like if you, it's almost like if you're not willing to really almost immediately, this is going to sound so ridiculous, but if you're not almost willing to immediately be completely honest, then I can't be in this conversation, because I will be that person that says, yeah, you know what? Actually, just today my meds got upped and I feel better and da 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 da, but it was really rough there for a minute. And like, I don't know. I don't like, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that I feel sometimes like I am that person that would answer way too honestly immediately. And I feel I feel uncomfortable with that, because prior to motherhood, I was always the person that was able to hold space for other people. So now being the person that almost needs space held for her is like so uncomfortable. And I don't know if it's fear or anxiety, or I guess it's really just discomfort with being the person that feels like she has to like word vomit if someone says, how are you?
Yeah. Oh, I totally do that. I like definitely do that. I think I'm probably an oversharer. That's like why I have a podcast.
Yeah, no, that
But
makes sense. Yeah.
I think there's something though to be said about the fact that if you say what's on your heart and you are honest and authentic with someone, you immediately have the chance for a real connection with that person and like an honest friendship, or even if it's just your like friendship that you bump into at the park, that can add so much value to your life. Like, little things like that add up. And if you just give like what we've called in our postpartum moms group that I did with, that was another thing I did when I was in postpartum depression with Liam. I joined a postpartum moms group, and it was a lot of other women who were experiencing similar things.
Was that
And they said
online or in person?
it was in person. This was pre-pandemic with Liam, so that was like amazing. It was through the same place where I did prenatal yoga and postpartum yoga, and where I taught yoga for a time. So it was really awesome. But what they would say is like, you don't have to give your grocery store answer here, because, you know, we run into someone at the grocery store. We're just trying to get on with our day. We're just going to tell them, oh, I'm great. The kids are great. You know, Liam's learning to walk, and be on your merry way. And it's like, if you just are always giving the grocery store answer, there isn't really space for the true connection there. And that's not what we all are longing for. And it's like, do you want to be friends with somebody who doesn't let you in? It's like, what is your friendship? And
no, I don't want that.
yeah. And
I
so
don't want that.
I just, I mean, and I'm sure that your friendships aren't like that, but as a way of encouraging you, I think that all people want to be met where they're at. And
yes,
you're in therapy. That's what you talk about all the time. So you have a therapist that you're like working through your like real heavy stuff with. It's not like you're I mean, I'm sure there's a fine line between like being honest and open and like trauma dumping on a
Right.
stranger, obviously. Like, but you're not going to do that.
Right. No.
And, whoever you meet is going to, if they're meant to be your person or meant to be in your life, they will
Yeah.
understand. Like,
Yes.
they'll just, if
It
they're a
will
mom and
click. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
we're all going through it. And
Yeah.
you don't really have time for a mom who's going to hear you be honest and then be like, "Oh, I'm on my merry way. Like I don't experience any of that. I'm just going to go get a manicure." It's like, well,
Right.
then you didn't want to be friends with that
Right. I know.
person either. And like, say la vie, there's like no skin off your back in a certain regard. So I would just like, and that's hard. I get that that's hard when you like put yourself out there and it doesn't work out, but if it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't. And, um, what's like one of those expressions that's like you like miss all the shots you don't take or something. I
Yes.
don't know. I'm so bad with expressions, but you know what I'm getting at.
I do. Yes, that's hysterical. Yes, I do. All right, and I'm going to push you on this one step further as far as the mom friending goes. Are you then, and this might sound like a ridiculous question, but I have to ask it. So you're saying hi, you're approaching people at the park, you're approaching people in this group and this and that. Like, are you then just like seeing them a third time and going, hey, do you want to purposefully meet here next time? Or do you want to go do something outside of here? Like, are you actively
Yeah.
pursuing
Okay.
relationships to that level? And do you have them still?
Yes. Okay. I'm glad you asked this question. So my like I really feel like I can pick up people's energy I'm talking about this a lot. Like it makes me act like I'm like sound like I'm gonna tell you that I'm like an empath. I mean, not no shame to people who say that, but like I'm not like somebody who like identifies as an empath or like thinks I have some like spiritual thing. But I do pick up people's energy pretty quick, and I can tell like, oh, I'm definitely gonna vibe with this person, and or like we're resonating immediately. And it's typically those people who I meet at the park, and they're also like, I don't know. You can just tell when you meet people. You have an idea if they're going to be your people or not. And so usually I have a few different things that come up. Actually, a lot of people will ask me for my phone number, which I know sounds crazy, but it's like I'm putting out that energy that I want to make friends. So a lot of times moms will ask me for my number. If not, I will ask them for their number if I want it, which I think has only happened like maybe a couple of times that I've asked other people for their number at the park. But my typical go-to like move,
What's your move,
after,
Carlie?
especially after they ask me for my number, because this has happened probably like, I know this is like ridiculous, but probably like at least 5 or 6 times. I've met moms at the park who've got my number. I tell them we always come to the park on like Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8:30 a.m. to like 9, and or 8:30 till 10 or whatever it is that we're there. And I'm like, we'll be here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you ever want to meet us, like come back. Like I'd love to connect, hang out, shoot me a text if you're coming to the park. Like maybe we can meet there. And I typically try to see them again in the same public setting where I saw them the first time. And this like also applies to like the trampoline park in the winter. I'm now in a group text with like, I don't know, like 7 other moms that they all like a bunch of them knew each other, but some of us didn't. And it's just crazy. Like if you're putting it out there and you're trying, like you can really find a nice groups of mom friends. And so I do get their numbers, and then say after that, like we've hung out a couple of times at the park or in a very non-pressure way, which is what is the most important to me, because it's like if I'm already going to be there, you can just show up. Like it's not as though you're feeling stressed out that you made plans with me at 8 in the morning and now your kid slept in, so you're not going to be able to make it till 9:30, and then they're feeling uncomfortable, like they have to text me and blow me off, and I change my schedule around for them, and you know how that goes. And same thing for me.
Yes.
Like I don't really like don't really like to put a lot of commitment, because when you have 2 small children, it's like you never freaking know if you're going to be able to do what you said you were.
Yeah.
And so I find that like very low commitment and public setting where you guys already both enjoy going, like that's why you met there, was because you like going there, really helps to cultivate it. And then it's low pressure. When your kids are outside, typically they're like playing and having a nice time, so you can chat a little bit more, or you can push them in the stroller and chat that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I have a couple of friends who I like became close enough with that we like intentionally have had play dates at each other's houses
Mm-hmm.
from there. But that's like a little bit more rare. But I have a lot of like mom friends that are like my park mom friends that like
Okay.
I will see there or intentionally plan to meet up with there.
Okay. Okay. And I I said I was going to push you one more time and now I'm going to push again. The only okay, tell me if this is like totally crazy, but part of my like my anxiety, I guess it is like getting to the point of having play dates at other people's houses. Like the idea of cleaning my house so that other people can come over, like literally it makes my skin crawl and I don't want to do it. So therefore, I don't even want to get down the road of inviting someone to play at our house because I feel like that automatically means I have to clean my bathroom and
Oh.
my kitchen floors and like it makes me crazy.
Okay, okay. Well, let me tell you something, girlfriend. My house is disgusting.
Okay. Okay. I instantly
And
feel better.
I clean for no one.
Yeah, okay.
No, I mean like being somewhat dramatic. But like seriously, it's I
Like
live
I
in this
don't
tiny
mean
apartment.
toys. I mean like toys. Like I know other moms can like get over it, but like, and I'm not saying I let our house be like a sty, but like if you're someone I'm just meeting, it is my wiring to be like, okay, now I have to like deep clean the bathroom that they might use.
Oh, okay. Well, listen to this. My best friend, one of my okay, actually, two of my best friends here in Buffalo are two of the cleanest people I have ever met. I mean, they have dogs, they have kids, and
Mm-hmm.
I go to their house for play dates, and their houses are truly clean.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's amazing. And they are not like, um, I don't know, like they're not like really like anal type people. Like you sound like you're like, oh, of course their house is clean because they're like they can't sleep at night until well, I actually think that they are like that. But I just think they're like high functioning humans.
Yes.
I, on the other hand, am I'm very type B. I'm very relaxed. If I have the choice to watch Netflix with my husband or like I don't know,
Do
do
the
something like
dishes.
dust,
Yeah.
yeah, do the dishes, clean my stove, which always has crusty food on it, like Swiffer, the old yogurt off the floor. Like 10 out of 10 times I'm choosing to hang out with my husband. And like some level of me is like kind of embarrassed when they come over and I always will say something like, I'm sorry, it's such a mess. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, but it literally is always like that. And that's
Okay.
another thing where it's like,
Yeah, I feel
uh,
better.
yeah, just like whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
the we don't for me, I am not a perfect person. Like I don't want to pretend that I'm something that I'm not.
Yeah.
If I have to pretend, then it's not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, all right. You're inspiring me in a lot of different ways. And this, I'm going to ask this. Um, well, maybe I should ask this first and then the other. Okay. I don't know if it's fair to ask, so I might edit this out. But what I want to ask is when you're out and you're sort of making that judgment call on someone's energy and that vibe, like, is there anything more that you are weighing the decision on whether to approach them or not? And I'm asking this from the point of view, and this is where I'm trying to choose my words carefully, and mostly because, again, I'm not sure it's a completely fair question because it's really totally about me. But I am so I am so uncomfortable in my body right now, in my skin. I'm heavier than I've ever been in my life, and that's a whole thing. I'm deep diving it in therapy. I'm deep diving it on this show. I'm doing all the journaling and all the books and I'm working on it. But there is such a big part of me that worries about either being approached or not being approached based on how I look, based on not just my body and the size that I am, but the fact that I'm not the mom that puts makeup on every morning and my hair is always like a freaking mess and I'm wearing baggy clothes sometimes. Like I don't know. Again, I don't know that I have a question really because I
You
don't
know what?
it's not
I
really
just
fair to ask you that. I just don't it's just something that's I just keep thinking about with all of this.
Yeah, I'm so sorry you're struggling with that, first of all, because I'm sure you are beautiful exactly the way you are. And you're in a season of life. And I think about this often. Um, we're in a season of life where we have to make choices all the time
Mm-hmm.
about what is most important to us.
Yeah.
And for me, in this season of my life, and like I say this from a place of privilege of like somebody who's just like a petite person and my body has been the same pretty consistently. And I didn't like, I'm bigger than I was before I had kids, but it's not like a drastic
Mm-hmm.
physical thing. But in this season of my life, I I can't make my fitness a priority. Like I am not going to be in the best shape of my life. Like I am not going to feel great in a bath. I'm not going to feel my best in a
Mm-hmm.
bikini. I'm not going to but I'm also like not going to sacrifice my rest and my moments of joy with my kids and
Mm-hmm.
my limited financial resources. Like when I have the ability to like expend energy, time, resources to things, like for me right now, my physical appearance doesn't get my energy. Like when my kids
Mm-hmm.
aren't up all night, when my kids aren't at home with me or like in a phase where they need 110% of me and it's so physically demanding,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's something that like it's for me it doesn't get the priority spot. And when my kids are in school and they go to school all day and I have different resources and different financial situation and things like that, it's like maybe then there will be another time where like I'm gonna feel my best, like I'm gonna look in the mirror and feel like wow, I look great, like this is, or I feel great, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And for me, that's not the season of life. And I don't know if you that resonates with you, but like
Yeah.
if it does, I just like hope you give yourself permission to like be okay with that. Like you don't have to look picture perfect. And to your point, physical appearance or like the way people look in terms of like makeup, hair, what they're wearing, like 0% impacts what like when I talk to them, what we talk about. It's
Mm-hmm.
the vibe that I get, and the typical vibe that I pick up on is if somebody is uber closed off to a point where it's like I just know that they aren't in a place where they're looking for connection, like that's the type of vibe that I'm describing, where it's like okay, it's probably not going to be a situation. Or I talk to them and it's just very clear that we aren't going to connect for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like pretty rare. I like most people, but there's certain people who can be like more abrasive
Mm-hmm.
that like I can't, that's doesn't normally, I don't normally jive with that. And that's like the type of thing that I'm talking about when I say
Mm-hmm.
a vibe that I don't get down with. But I'm so sorry that you feel that way. And I would be absolutely appalled if any other mom was looking at you or whether or not they were going to like want to be friends with you based on what you look like. Screw anybody who's like that, because
And as you're talking, it's like so obvious to me, like, and perhaps, and I appreciate you answering, and I appreciate you essentially letting me ask you with it in not so many words, do you like judge basically a book by its cover, and if someone's like heavier than whatever, they do not approach them? I mean, like hearing the fact that I actually needed to ask that is like now somewhat appalling me, and mostly it's making me really appreciative. I'm like I said, I'm kind of appalled that I even asked, but I'm so appreciative of your answer and your willingness to go there with me, because it also has allowed me to see and really hear from another human being kind of how ridiculous it is. You know, like, because you're right. If someone is like judging me for how I look, then I don't really want to be friends with them anyway, and I don't care if they approach me or not. Like, it's, it's just, gosh, it's so deep for me right now that I actually just did that, and I'm kind of like, wow.
no, I honestly like I can tell it's like such a vulnerable spot for you, and I don't want you to like overthink it at all. I'm glad that you were like able to just lay it out there and ask what was really on your heart, and
Mm-hmm.
that I could, bring you back to earth to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
to because I know what that feeling is like when you're just caught up in something, and it has nothing to do with um me or with anyone else. It's just what's going on with you internally. And,
Yeah.
um, but I hope that you can, in some way, like start to regain that confidence with, and it doesn't matter if your body never changes shape, just in
Mm-hmm.
yourself, that like nobody else is thinking twice about what you look like,
Mm-hmm.
just like no one else is thinking twice what I look like. And, um,
Yeah.
you know, so at least I try to have that attitude. And I mean, that doesn't mean that I don't like have really low like self-esteem days and stuff like that. Everyone does. Like no
Mm-hmm.
one, I don't think anyone is 100% confident, but I do think that um, almost nobody else is paying attention to our bodies except
I know.
ourselves.
I know. You're so right. I know. And you know what? The other question that I was going to go to, which does apply, but on a more generalized basis, like I've jotted down, some of the phrases that you've said, and they're not going to fully mean anything outside of the context, but you know, you said disempowered state, you said acknowledging their dignity, people just want to be seen, meet me where you're at, trauma dumping. Like these are all phrases that I've come to learn through therapy and through, kind of this excessive reading on self-development. Like it sounds to me that you are very well versed in a lot of this. Like where is that coming from for you? Is that just like innately in you, or are you also reading and listening and doing things that you would learn this type of terminology? And I don't know, it just, the way you speak is what's the word I want to use? It's like, to me, I just hear it and I go, oh, like she she's done work on herself. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah. Well, I think that's how I would describe
I
it.
am
I
like
try to do the
really
work.
like going at you with these questions. I'm so sorry.
No, I'm so glad. I'm happy to talk about it. I mean, it's funny being on the other end
Yeah,
of
I know,
a
I'm
podcast
sure.
interview because, I do a podcast because I like to talk about this stuff, but I don't, I don't, I wouldn't think of any of this when I was doing a solo episode. Like typically my solo episodes are where I will talk more about
Mhm.
things like mental health and like this, or at least from my perspective,
Mhm.
where I'm giving my thoughts on it. So this is actually kind of cool. I almost am wondering about, I don't know, you have to be open to it, but maybe even like posting some of this to my podcast. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. But I'm going to just share the episode. Hopefully my listeners will all want to tune in because I think there is like a lot that I've never talked about, a lot of this stuff
Mhm.
on my own podcast yet. And it's a lot more thoughtful and deep than I've like gone in certain ways. But yeah, I try to do the work. I mean, um, I in college was a really anxious person. I was like looking to, I don't know, just the world to find my answers. And
Mhm.
I, everyone has past, everyone has things that they go through in their life that are challenging and that they overthink or they beat themselves up about or
Mhm.
they like don't understand. And I was a psychology major in college because I
Mm.
just wanted to understand people. I
Mhm.
wanted to understand why people did what they did and why they thought the way they thought. And I've always been interested in human connection. That's
Mhm.
just been like always something that's like super innately on my heart, and conflict resolution, which
Mm.
is like kind of how the lawyer thing comes into play, I think.
Ah, okay. Yes.
Like mediation between
Mhm.
people, things like that, like understanding where somebody else is coming from and how you can meet halfway with people.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so yeah, I don't really know. I guess just trying to understand myself and get to a place of more peace in my life. And really like during law school, I like found a lot more peace, but then like I've been talking about this episode, like I've just had some highs and lows since then, finding out we ended up in Buffalo, then the postpartum depression with Liam, like both of those were two like critical points in my life where, it's not as though it was like all smooth sailing, but
Mhm.
I guess that I'm trying to think like how do I kind of know all of this stuff? And it's just that I'm thoughtful about it. I
Mhm.
don't know. I
Like
don't really
you
know how
like
to
you
describe.
take you take time, it sounds like, to check in with yourself.
Yes.
And what I guess I'm asking is, and there may not be anything more than that to say. I mean, that's perfectly fine. I guess, like, I I needed to learn that through therapy, and that's me. I also am looking up at my bookshelf, and almost every book on my shelf is like I am like obsessively consuming this type of content. And so I guess what I'm saying is, when you take time to check in with yourself, what does it look like? Are you like,
Okay,
are
so
you
I can,
journaling? Like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Okay, so let me think. I can give you like a good example of sort of like my most recent check-in.
okay.
So I've noticed myself in some negative thought patterns. And I
Mm,
think in general, I'm like a pretty positive energy type person. Um, a big part of like my peace and my heart is that like I have a deep sense of faith and like a trust in God's plan for my life. And
mhm,
um, I think a big thing of like my turning point with just baseline anxiety, like falling to the wayside, was essentially um, surrendering to the fact that like I'm not in the driver's seat and I can't control everything. And
mm.
I don't really want to control everything, which is kind of like how I end up in the spiral of like having crusty yogurt on my floor. um, but yeah, like,
Mhm.
so essentially like that's my baseline is like,
Okay.
um, I take, I just try to take the next best step every
Mm,
time.
mhm,
And I try to do that in like the most acutely like present way where it's like not too forward thinking,
mm,
and very much like moment by moment, like what's the next best step? Like what can I do to make this moment like how can I make this a positive moment, not a negative one?
mhm,
And that can be as simple as like I wake up, the boys were up all night, I'm tired and cranky, and like I can put on a show for the boys, leave the lights off for a while, like relax, wallow, scroll on my phone, or I can like decide like let's flip on all the lights, let's put on some music. I'm gonna make a big cup of coffee, and like I
mhm.
can't do anything about the fact that I didn't sleep last night, so like I can make the most of it.
Right.
And what I caught myself in this winter, because it's been the longest winter in the history of my life, I think, and I caught myself in like a lot of these negative thought patterns where I was just like sort of feeling like life was a chore
Mhm,
and not so much like life was a joy when
mhm,
it is.
mhm,
And I had to check in with myself. Like, I think that one thing a friend of mine pointed out to me was we're probably going to be moving to this new city, and it's a more rural place than Buffalo. And my biggest fear about going someplace rural is I'm going to be bored and I'm not going to meet people. In
mhm,
Buffalo, there's tons of transplants, which is what I call myself, like a transplant here because I'm not from Buffalo. And
mhm.
um, that is immediately a hotspot for meeting other people in your city. Is like if they also aren't from there, they're
Right.
probably looking for friends and they want to connect, and you have that in common right off the bat. So most of my friends here in Buffalo are also Buffalo transplants, as we call ourselves.
Mhm,
So I was really scared to go to this rural town and maybe not meet any friends. And that was my attitude. And my friend said to me, like, hey, like I actually moved to a more rural place once, and it was one of the best places I've ever moved because I made one friend. And it's such a small space. Then she immediately turned me on to her network. And I was like a part of a family immediately.
mm.
And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like,
Perspective.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, perspective. I was like, you like immediately, like, why not go to the positive? And her saying that, it was like it tricked a wire in me of like, okay, let's take a second, think about this is not just in this specific conversation. Like, there's been other ways that it's trickling into my day where I'm just being more negative, and how can I just lift myself out of that space? Like, my kids want to go balls to the walls, and I'm tired and I am overtired, and it's 8 in the morning, and it's like I'm asking them to lower their energy down to mine. And it's like, well, what if I meet them where they are?
Mm,
Well, as soon as I do that, their joy, if I allow myself to immerse myself in their joy becomes mine. Like,
mm,
and it's like, that's the whole dang point of being a mom, is to like relive the joy of childhood with our children, to love them, to connect with them. And coming back to that place for me is like it's a constant exercise. It's something
mhm.
we have to do all the time, because when you get caught up in the minutia, in the routine, in the annoying stuff that you have to do every day, like washing the dishes, you can fall into the trap of like focusing on that and not focusing on the joy. And for me, that's like what it really looks like to me,
Yeah.
I think, in
Yeah.
terms of like checking in.
Mhm. And thank you for taking the time to go through that. And I really appreciate that you do call it an exercise, because it's so easy to kind of, the conversation coming full circle now, of seeing other women on particularly either social media or even just out and about and putting all of these, you know, completely unbased assumptions on them that whatever they're doing in that moment is easy for them, or seeing them, on social media, like having a fun moment with their kid. It's like you're not seeing the pep talk she gave herself 5 minutes before that to be able to get to that point. And
Precisely.
that's
Yeah.
where I struggle with consuming content, and I have to check in and unfollow or do certain things that you know help me. But it's like, yeah, like it's so easy to see someone in a moment and go, wow, they must love everything about everything all the time. Like, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel like crap today? And it's like exactly what I said. Now I'm beating the dead horse, but we didn't see potentially the low moment right before, or the, like I said, the pep talk of like having to actually talk herself through that moment. It's so important to talk about. So thank you for saying that and for calling it what it is. It can be work. It can be exercise. It
Yeah.
it takes intention. Really, I guess is more um, the word I want to say.
Yeah, I totally agree. It does take intention, and it doesn't come natural all the time for me. And I
Mm-hmm.
would say that like my baseline is like pretty positive, steady, joyous. Like our life is hard, but it's
Yeah.
good. It's
Yeah.
really good, and I have so much to be grateful for. And the more that I can stay focused on that, it helps me. But it's far too easy, especially when we've been locked inside a small apartment for
Oh
4
man.
months to like
Yeah.
start feeling sorry for myself. And I that's why I wanted to create this podcast, is
Mm-hmm.
because when we are mom in the thick of it, it is really, really hard.
Yeah.
It's hard work. And it's hard to balance talking about the truth and the lows and the tough stuff with also sharing the positive stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's so negative and it's like you just actually like are coming off like you hate motherhood or whatever, like no one's really necessarily benefiting from that. That's
Right.
like not the space.
Right.
um but the good stuff, the heart of it, is in like the authentic sharing, where you show, like we were talking about, coming full circle, the full range of emotions, like
Yeah.
the highs, the lows. And at the end of the day, what you're seeing on social media, what we're consuming, is a highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's even like, I don't know, like curated,
Yes.
not highlights.
Right.
So
Right.
if that makes sense,
Totally. Yes.
which is like also like kind of a weird thing.
Right.
Oh.
Yes. I know. Yes. Yes. I agree. Um, is in starting your podcast, in starting your social media platforms, and creating the community, has anything surprised you in that journey?
Oh, um, well, I have like two thoughts, and I don't know how frank I should be. My first thought is, one thing that surprised me was, I came from a very small hometown, and I like, when I went away for school, I never really came back, and I lost touch with a lot of people that I grew up with. And it's not like people I was super close with, or like it's not as though I like had a particularly like amazing friendship or no friendship with, but
Mm-hmm.
just people from high school who have come along for the journey. Like that's just like been like weirdly touching to
Oh,
me. I don't
interesting.
know.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
I just, high school and childhood, like there was like I wasn't really like in my stride. Like it took me a while to find myself in life, and like it's not
Mm,
even like I'm like thoroughly like proud of always like the person that I was during those times. And not like I was like a like absolute mean girl or something like that. Like I don't
right.
mean to imply that, but like
You were a kid.
um
Yeah. You're like,
yeah, I was
yeah.
a kid.
Yeah.
And like part of me is like sort of like scared of like opening that door again,
Mm,
and like I don't know, like you're insecure in high school, like, and in looking back on it, I'm still kind of insecure, like did people like me or not, like I don't know. And so it's been kind of like, that's one thing that surprised me, is like I've reconnected with, and been able to like, I don't know, have like a little virtual friendship with some people that I grew up with and have
yeah.
not spoken to in 15 plus years, so
Mm-hmm.
that's been kind of cute and surprising. And the other thing that surprised me, I guess, in the social media space is um there's like only a handful of moms that I realize like I'm truly uplifted by, and like
Mm,
fully enjoy consuming their content.
mm-hmm.
And that there's a lot more that is, to me, gives me the ick. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel so rude saying that, but it's just like very inauthentic.
Yeah.
You can tell they're just doing it because they want followers, or I think they want to make money probably.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, people, becomes like abundantly clear that like a lot of people buy followers, and in the motherhood space, I'm like, this is a little bit surprising. So
Yes.
that's maybe more on TikTok, but it has made me realize like I have to be more selective about what I'm consuming, and that's just more recently that I'm coming to know this and
Mm-hmm.
realize this. So I'm trying to refine in the motherhood space who I follow
Mm-hmm.
and whose content I consume, because I want to feel um, like it's real. I want to feel like it's uplifting in some way, or I want to feel like seen if
Mm-hmm.
it's not the most uplifting content, but it's the real stuff, and or I want to like laugh
Right.
or learn. And there
Right.
are people who offer all those things.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that has been surprising to me. It's like you have to be more discerning than I used to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. I remember when my first was born. Yeah, it was my first. Jessica Alba had a baby at like within days of me, and
Hmm.
this is I have really nothing against Jessica Alba, but I had to unfollow her because she was posting like 2 weeks later about getting a workout in and being at the office, and I was like, what? And I had to like have that real talk with myself of, she's Jessica Alba. She has like 12
Yeah.
nannies and a
Yeah.
trainer and a chef, and she owns a multi-gazillion-dollar company. Like, stop. But
Yeah.
in a very extreme sense, it's real for her, but it's so far from my reality that I just needed a break. Like, I couldn't consume
Yeah.
what she was putting out there. Anyway, um,
Yeah. I think
but
that's a perfect example.
yeah, yeah. Well, Carlie, is there anything, either about your podcast or about your story that you would have wanted to mention that I didn't think to ask you?
No, not at all. I think you did an amazing job and asked me questions that I've never thought about before necessarily, or spoken about. So I really appreciate that, and just want to thank you for holding the space for me to share, and for being so thoughtful in your questions. And I think, or I hope that this will resonate and reach other people, because it's definitely been vulnerable in some ways, and I feel like it was really from the heart, this whole conversation. I felt like really seen and heard by you. So thank you for that.
And I 100% agree. Thank you. And I, I really asked you some very targeted questions and some interesting ones, and so I appreciate you just kind of going with me and just letting it roll. So, Carlie, thank you so much. I will link, all of your stuff in the show notes. And thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And anyone who's listening who wants to come along for the ride and follow along and listen with the Call Her Mommy Motherhood as We Know It community, we'd love to have you. And thank you guys so much. And also, oh, this is one other thing I want to mention. Make sure you stay tuned, because Christy is going to be a guest on my podcast
Woo
really soon too. So yeah, stay tuned for that. That's the only other thing I wanted to mention.
woo! All right, thanks, Carlie.
Okay, you love her, right? I mean, anyone who can gracefully handle the questions that I threw at her is a person I want to be around. I essentially asked her if my insecurities around my body image would be a turnoff for her in like wanting to be my friend. Like, okay. So we have to talk about this, because the safe space that Carlie held for me during that part of the conversation propelled such an incredible change in my life. And I'll always be grateful to her and this interview for doing that. And what I mean is, I said it on the show and I'll say it again, but hearing myself actually ask that out loud to another person on a pretty public platform really put into perspective for me where I'm at mentally and emotionally still with the body image situation. And, that moment reminded me of being in therapy, in the sense that I have found that merely thinking thoughts all the time is one thing. But so often when I say the thoughts out loud to another person, whether that's Carlie or my therapist, I hear them differently, and it prompts a different type of processing. So again, I'm so grateful for Carlie for simply existing in the type of energy that she does because she made me feel comfortable enough to go there. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I heard how ridiculous it was. But I know now that I needed to have that moment. I needed to say it out loud as part of my healing. And, I shared with my therapist what happened, and we were really able to unpack everything about why I asked, what I hoped the answer would be, what I got from it, what I reflected on. I mean, it really helped push the needle forward. And, similarly, but different, I don't know. Immediately after Carlie and I spoke, I went downstairs to have dinner with my husband. He asked me how it went, and I said, "Babe, I made a friend." Now, I have wonderful friends that I've had for decades, but there was something about really feeling like I had made a true, meaningful bonding connection that sparked a confidence in me that I haven't had in a long time. And it also sparked a renewed interest in forming connections and deepening the ones I already have in place. And if you've experienced depression or anxiety or even just being a new mom and feeling really overwhelmed with everything you have going on, it can be really challenging to maintain your relationships or seek out new ones that, more closely align with where you are in life right now. Hence the whole idea of making mom friends. So basically, I adore Carlie and we're besties and her show is awesome. Her TikToks, her reels are so funny, so relatable. Please check her out. And if you haven't already, definitely head over to the Carl Her Mommy podcast, episode 30, where Carlie interviews yours truly. I'll link it in the show notes. Love you for listening. Love you, Carlie. All right. Peace. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Sass Says is a production of Luann Niagara Inc. This podcast is meant to be educational and not meant to replace professional therapy or professional medical attention. To learn more about today's show and what's new in my world, head over to sasssays.com. Thanks so much. Talk later.